So, as promised in yesterday's share, I went to the Aleph store and I got myself an Aleph, and here it is. It's a very black Aleph written on a white piece of paper. Now, most Kabbalists consider that this letter this Aleph is composed of three parts, and mostly, I guess it's not mostly, but this is considered to be a Yud. This is considered to be above, even though it's on a line, and this is another Yud, even though it's upside down. Now, often the Kabbalists will say this is not really a Yud, it could be another Dalet. But that's for another lecture somewhere else. So he says the Yud is a gematria of 10. It has a numerical value of 10. Vav has a numerical value of 6, that's 16. And the other Yud has a value of 10. That makes a gematria of 26, which is the gematria, the numerical value of the name Yud K Vav K. So if you don't believe me, I'll just show it to you real quickly because a lot of people that maybe don't know this. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, that's 15, Vav is 6, that's 21, and another Hey is 26, the numerical value. So all the value of this name, which is the manifest, what we call the manifest name of Yud K Vav K, is a name that exists in extremely high and very small places. Its tremendous amount of the energy of the universe is in this name. It can be also moved into this idea. 10, 6, and 10 is 26. So now let's look at the Aleph. He wants us to, Rabbi Mimran wants us to have in mind about this Aleph. And he's been talking about it, and we can learn a little bit more about what he has to say. Let me see if I look. Just 1 second here. Let me just see if I don't lose my place. Okay. Okay. Here we are. It says the ability to hold an image in the mind's eye is discussed at length in the Kabbalah texts dealing with meditation. Thus, the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the oldest and most prestigious of all the books of creation, that is the book of creation, but of the books of Kabbalah, refers to two processes in depicting the letters. One process is called in English engraving, which in Hebrew is chakika. So I would call it carving out. He says it's engraving. The next one is hewing, which is chatziva. Now, what's the difference between engraving and hewing? Hewing is like carving out. Both processes are seen as important if one is going to depict the letters. As discussed in the previous chapter, the Hebrew letters are seen as channels of the forces of creation. In other words, I said before that they're an interface between the light of nothing, which is the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, and the light of physicality, which is us. And as such, they can be used as a powerful means of drawing down spiritual energy. However, engraving and hewing are useful also for less esoteric forms of meditation. Now, let's say he says like this: the term engraving denotes fixing an image in the mind's eye so that it does not waver or move. Now, that's engraving. It means it's solid. It gets like stamped and there. No matter what other images may arrive in the field of vision, in other words, you could have this like a billboard in the front of your head, there are other things flying around. The engraved image remains there as if the image were actually engraved in the mind, stamped in the mind. Once a person has accomplished this, he can usually depict the desired image as soon as he begins his meditation, almost as a reflex. Once again, once a person has accomplished this, so that he has this fixed in his mind, no matter what is flying around it, he can usually depict the desired image as soon as he begins his meditation, almost as a reflex. However, even when the image is clear and steady. Well, let me see if I got, here we go. Let me lift this up a little bit. He says, however, even when the image is clear and steady, engraved in the mind, as it were, it is usually surrounded by other images. Now, in my case, when I try to do this, I see things are moving. The next step is to isolate the image. In other words, more focus. Thus, for example, if one were visualizing the letter Aleph, one would attempt to isolate it and rid the mind's eye of all other imagery. So here we have an Aleph. So if you're looking at, this is like the contemplation technique. But imagine this is in your mind. And as it's going through your mind, well, either it's moving, like in my case, is that other things are coming in and taking its place. Or even if you're able to engrave it in your mind, but there are many other images surrounding it, possibly changing constantly. He says it's one of the techniques is to learn how to hold this. So let me see, where was I? So he said, once a person has accomplished this, he can usually depict the desired image as soon as he begins his meditation. However, even when the image is clear and steady, it's engraved in the mind as if it were. It is usually surrounded by other images. The next step is to isolate the image. Thus, for example, if one were visualizing the letter Aleph, one would attempt to isolate it and rid the mind's eye of all other imagery. Now, this is he says the word attempt. It's not so easy. Not so easy at first. This is known as hewing or chetziva. So the idea is what? Is to try to eliminate everything else. Is like chipping off the bad parts. Hewing. Hewing is lashon like working with an axe. The analogy is the hewing out a stone from the surrounding right. In other words, that's what he means. It's carving. That's carved. This is carving. One is stamping. One is carving. The process consists in designating the desired stone. So in other words, let's say we're contemplating the concept of the Aleph. Here's our old Aleph. Once again, our Aleph. So here's our Aleph. We're trying to contemplate that, but other things are coming. He says that's the process which is called hewing. The process consists in designating the desired stone. In this case, I said it's the Aleph. And then hewing away the extraneous stone. They're getting rid of the part that doesn't work there. One does the same thing in the mind. So the same way we would work with trying to get the diamond out of the rocks is the same thing we try to isolate the name of God, or that letter that represents God, and get rid of the rest, to hew it out from between it, as a way of all extraneous imagery surrounding the desired form. All that is left is the image then that one desires. There are a number of ways of hewing away surrounding imagery. One way is to replace all the mental images other than the Aleph with pure white. So he means it's like an eraser, a white eraser. Is that what he means? Or just change the background from multiple objects to just one color. But try that. First, focus on the Aleph, allowing it to fill the mind. Then gradually hew away the images around the Aleph, replacing them with white fire. Imagine the white fire burning away the other images. Begin with a small spot of white fire at the top of the Aleph, using it to burn away a small spot of imagery. So it would say the way you do this is that you have this Aleph engraved in your mind, but it's surrounded by other, what is the psuls, things that are not important. So he said, just take a little part of the imagery in the background and erase it out with a whiteness, or white it out. So he said, right at the top of the Aleph. So he's begin with a small spot of white fire at the top of the Aleph. So let's say we try to put some white fire right in here. If there was a lot of images, just try to start carving it out. Try carving it out. So he says, and I think that what he means to say is this: yeah, maybe you can get to a point where you've got it really pure, but the carving itself process is also a lot of kedushin. Imagine the white fire burning away the other images. Begin with a small spot of white fire at the top of the olive, using it to burn away a small spot of imagery. Let the white fire expand, turning away larger and larger areas. As it moves around the olive, and so as it starts to clean up the other images around the olive, burning away images on all sides. Finally, one sees the olive all alone, written in black fire on white fire. In general, a visualization technique such as this is very valuable and can be used in other forms of Jewish meditation. Thus, many classical Kabbalah texts teach, they speak about Yehudim or unification. For the most part, the meditational method of Yehudim involves the imaging various names of God. Now, we're going to, since he brought that up, the concept of Yehudim or unifications, so he brought that part up, then we're going to stop right here, and we're going to wait for the next time that we have a chance to have a shir, and we'll start getting into the concept of Yehudim. I want you to know that if you meet a Kabbalist, if somebody's really a Kabbalist, there is a rabbi that comes to Boca Raton, and originally here his in-laws rented him a house, and he had all signs of learning Zohar every day. So this is signed. I don't know if that was exactly like that, but that was a place for learning Zohar. When you listen to him talk, he talked only about one thing, and that's Yehudim. Because Yichud means combining opposites, making things into one. But the Ein Sof Baruch Hu is only one. We live in a world of separations. But the truth is only one. So how do we get to that? By concentrating on making onenesses, and those are called Yehudim. And we're going to pick that up in the next year. This is Baruch Fleischman. I'm at the Tikkun elevator call out.